welcome Marcus Whitney.
Thanks, Mark. All right, it was actually super helpful to hear everyone's background, because now I know there's no doctors in the room, and that wasn't necessarily what I was expecting, but this is good. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about the topic Mark asked me to talk about, but we are in no way limited to talk about that. We can talk about anything y'all want to talk about in the whole world. Entrepreneurship in healthcare today. So Health Further, the organization that Mark talked about that I founded 5 years ago, started as a gathering, annual gathering based here in Nashville of healthcare innovators, but it was meant to be inclusive, and so we had industry representatives largely from the provider space, hospitals, physician groups, then let's call it 80-20 hospitals versus payers, and then we would bring in investors from around the country and innovators from around the world, right? And the innovators were like, you guys and you guys, right? Both helping with innovating the way that people are going to market, what they're doing in the clinical setting, how they're managing their data, et cetera, things like that. And when we first started in 2015 with the gathering, there weren't that many changes happening in the healthcare space, and so we would meet once a year and we would sort of talk about this potential regulation that was changing, or this potential payment model that was changing, or this innovation that was happening, and it was kind of lightweight. Over the years, some pretty major things have happened, largely driven by Medicare not really wanting to pay as much as they've been paying because they're paying at an unsustainable rate, right? If you look at the percentage of GDP for the country that healthcare represents, it usually hovers around 18 to 20%. Far more than it is for any other modern economy in the world today. And then if you look at our outcomes, they're nowhere near the best in the world for the developed world. So we've got a real mismatch there. And then furthermore, we're going to run out of money. The government can't continue to afford to pay what it's paying for the healthcare system, especially for the results that it's getting. And so we're now getting to this place where we're having to figure out, how do we give access to everybody, but at the same time change the way that we're paying for it, so A, we're getting more value, and B, we sort of limit the downside on it, because we can't be 20% of our GDP forever. So that's like an overall theme coming from Medicare, and the result has been lower reimbursement models. So for anyone who doesn't understand how payers sort of decide what they're going to pay providers, generally speaking, the baseline is Medicare, right, which is set by CMS, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. So they basically set what the prices are for the business, and then everybody else, all the commercial payers, kind of go off of that, and they do some percentage of that, usually a percentage up from that, but some percentage of that as a baseline. So as Medicare starts saying, yeah, I'm not paying for that anymore, I'm paying less for that, or no, you're going to have to show me, you're going to have to do more for that same dollar, it's changing the way that providers, the hospitals and the physician groups, have run their business and their margins and sort of all those things. And the result has been consolidation in rural settings where reimbursement rates are really low because you don't have as many commercial payers, because the economy is not as strong. You have hospitals closing. That's been happening a lot in the United States over the last 3-4 years. Really, really challenging economic environment for many hospitals, with the exception of the ones that are in the absolute best markets with the best contracts with insurance companies, AKA HCA, right? So for the most part, the healthcare provider space is in need of really sort of figuring out how they're going to evolve to the changes in the way that the insurance companies, driven by Medicare, are going to pay. The second big thing is employers are a very, very large payer. So think about a company like Walmart, right? They're the largest employer in half the states in the United States today, and their spend for healthcare is in the billions of dollars, right? So when they're looking at their operating expenses and they're under siege from Amazon, which is taking their market share, and they're like, yeah, we got to grow, but we also have to improve our margins. So let's go to the OpEx and let's look in that where the big lines are. Healthcare is a big honking red flag, right? And they're looking at that and they're saying, hold on, we've got all this real estate. We've got all these dollars. We've got all these people who are employed by us. We have all these people walking through our doors. Why don't we start doing more of this healthcare stuff? Why don't we start getting more stringent about the contracts that we're signing? Why don't we start steering people to providers that we do direct deals with? And so you're starting to have that happen, right? Very, very large employers who actually have a lot of control and a lot of power are starting to renegotiate deals. They're starting to do direct deals with particular providers that are guaranteeing prices so that they can lower their prices. And they believe, they've been on record saying this, they actually said it at our last festival in the summer, they believe they can cut their expenses in healthcare by a third or even half just by analyzing the spend and both doing direct deals and also cutting out what they would call inappropriate care. So inappropriate care means, I go to the doctor and I've got a fever and they say, oh, okay, well, we need to prescribe you an antibiotic. Well, did you really need to prescribe me an antibiotic, right? Did I really need to incur that cost, or did I need to just go home and sweat it out for a couple days, right? So it's every time that the healthcare system prescribes something or calls for a procedure that's not really needed, that adds costs. But the way that the healthcare system is incentivized today, the more procedures, the more money they make. Right? They're not paid for producing value or keeping you well. They're paid for procedures, right? Whether that's surgery or a lab or whatever, that's what they're sort of paid for. And so these employers are getting hip to this and saying, did you really need to do that? Right? Was that really a necessary procedure? So with that, that's more pressure happening on the providers. Then the third big thing that's happening is new entrants are coming into the space. So there's a space in venture capital called digital health, and for a while you had a bunch of Silicon Valley companies coming in, and Silicon Valley has a particular mantra of like move fast and break things, and that works in just about every space except for healthcare. So we've all now heard about Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes and how that was a big sham, and just recently Ubiome got raided by the FBI. So a bunch of Silicon Valley companies have been coming into the space over the last 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years and trying to move fast and break things and getting in big trouble for doing it, right? So I'm not really talking about them when I say new entrants. I'm talking about Amazon, right? Which is not a Silicon Valley company, right? That is the biggest company in the world, right? So we should not conflate the two things. They're super, super powerful, incredibly well capitalized, and have infrastructure at every layer that you can possibly think of that you would need in order to do healthcare. And keep in mind, like they just bought Whole Foods, right? So they could just buy a health system. If you ever compare the market cap of Amazon to the market cap of, say, HCA, it's multiples larger, right? Multiples larger. So they could buy a very large health system if they wanted to, right? And really just go into that business wholesale. So as Amazon does things like make acquisitions of companies like PillPack for $1 billion, and now they're in the pharmacy business because they've got PBM licenses in 19 states, it started to make everyone realize, oh, snap, like, we're now going to have Amazon and Apple and Google all getting into this game. And basically, there hasn't been an industry that they've entered where they haven't made a serious dent to date, right? So those are the three big forces that you have sort of coming into healthcare. So why does that matter to you all, especially like if you're not necessarily doctors? Because I actually think this is going to create a better environment for doctors because it's going to provide them more options in terms of who they can work for. But I think the big question is really, how is Nashville going to play into this? Now, here's the bright spot. Amazon's moving to Nashville, so that's good, right? Because if they're going to take over the industry, at least they'll have a big base here. But healthcare is a massive, massive part of our local GDP, right? So it's something like 30 or more % of it. And depending on who you believe, 1 out of every 4 to 5 jobs is basically a healthcare job in this region. So it's pretty significant, and we are highly concentrated in what would be called the provider space, right? So hospitals, ambulatory surgical centers, physician groups, behavioral centers, those kind of 4 big categories, and then all the derivative things around those things. That's sort of what our concentration is. And the part of the industry that's facing the most pressure and the most tension from those 3 things that I just talked about is, in fact, the provider space. So there's massive opportunity there because you're always going to need doctors and you're always going to need hospitals, but there is a need to change. There is a need to change, and that's where the entrepreneurialism comes in. So if we go back 50 years, for-profit hospitals really they're literally 50 years old, and they were literally born here. And when you go back in that history, now we look at HCA and it's like this massive Fortune 1000 company, but like when Thomas Frist Sr., Thomas Frist Jr., and Jack Massey came together to create it, it was super entrepreneurial and very, very doubted by all industry professionals at that time. It's probably the hardest thing in the world to imagine that HCA was a non-traditional, crazy-looking company, but they were. The idea of bundling different services in a building, which is really what they were doing, bundling different services in a building for efficiency and care coordination, this was the model. was totally unheard of and thought to be completely crazy. And then to do it as a for-profit venture as opposed to a nonprofit was even crazier. It was, but the good news is it was driven by changes in payment. It was 1968, the introduction of Medicare by Lyndon B. Johnson spurred the creation of HCA. So as we now have this new era of changes in the way that we pay, if we as an ecosystem can change the way that we provide care in response to that and not get so connected to the way that it's been over the last 50 years, which has been really, really great for our city and a lot of money has been made. But if we can look back to look forward and look back and realize how this was all created was ultimately through entrepreneurship, then I think we have a great chance to continue to lead in healthcare over the next 50 years. So that's sort of the key basis of the story. I do think a lot of really strong ingredients that you would need for Nashville to have the potential to be a city that continues to lead healthcare for the next 50 years are here. So you've got incredible subject matter expertise. You've got existing assets. You've got smart capital when it comes to healthcare. Like I said, you've got Amazon moving here, which is great. You've got us being one of the fastest growing markets in the country. So that means a lot of talent is moving here. It's a healthy economy. It's a friendly business state. So there's so many great things. And there's the threat of putting your head in the sand and acting like nothing is changing and really getting whacked over the head. Because I'll tell you this much, every single publicly traded, for-profit, very, very large company is going to look at a particular industry segment that is 20% of GDP and ask, what are we doing there? It's their job. It's their fiduciary duty. So to say they're not going to do it is absolutely not true, right? Walmart's going to do it. Amazon's going to do it. Apple's going to do it. Google's going to do it. They're all going to do it, right? So the question is, what are we going to do collectively? Because so many of our industries, you're all here because you're sponsors, because you work in this industry, because this industry is doing well, right? So you're able to sort of support this industry because it's doing so well. So not that it's your responsibility, but just something to sort of make you aware of in terms of how the industry is sort of shaking out right now. So, and then in addition to Health Further, I also co-founded a venture firm that my partner and co-founder Vic Gatto runs. It's called Jumpstart, and we have 80 companies in that portfolio. It's a seed and Series A fund, so we've got about 35 million under management. But the companies that we work with are, I would say they are industry friendly for the most part, but do things in a disruptive way from an operational perspective. They're not necessarily trying to disrupt the industry, but the way that they go about delivering care and value to customers, patients, employers, providers, payers is disruptive to the status quo. So I see a lot of innovation. I see what works. I see a lot of what doesn't work. So I'm happy to talk about any of those things as well. And I'm happy to talk about soccer. Yes?
So are all the companies in your Jumpstart box, are they all medical related or are they kind of diversified?
Yeah, that's a great question. So all the companies in the Jumpstart portfolio are health care or health and wellness related. So we are completely focused on that vertical. I should have clarified that. And for us, we made that decision 5 years ago just because if you're doing venture capital and you're not in one of three cities, Silicon Valley / San Francisco, Boston, or New York, then you're sharing 25% of the venture capital market with the rest of the country, right? So 75% of the capital is in three cities. Okay, so if you're not in those three cities, then you have to be smart capital. You can't just be capital. And so for us, the only way and you're not smart capital because you're smart. You're smart because your ecosystem has some unique unfair advantage. So obviously the unfair advantage for us is that Nashville is a very, very strong healthcare city. So we focus exclusively on healthcare, and it's great for companies that want to come and support the industry. And there's also a heavy status quo sort of, survivorship bias here as well. So sometimes when we see leaders respond to an innovation with a sort of visceral negative response that is not very rational, we'll invest because we know their fear response was so strong that's actually a good thing. If that makes sense. So whether we have access to customers and partners that can help, or we get insight into something because it's really scaring somebody and we poke and it really hurts, we feel like we have a unique advantage in healthcare only. It would be very, very difficult for us to be venture and most other things, just with the way Nashville is situated. We should have seeded questions, Mark. He's gone. He left me here with okay, well, y'all can ask me about soccer or Nashville.
About soccer.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you decided what your chants are going to be? Like in the UK, soccer fans have the chants and the sing-song. I just want to imagine what that mashup in Nashville is going to be like.
Okay.
And whether or not someone has written anything for you at this point.
Yeah. Have you been to a match?
No.
See? That's why you don't know.
Ah.
Yeah, so a little bit of history there. So probably my favorite thing, and it's super timely because I got a post today. You know how Facebook will show you memories of posts that you sent from years back? So my post today was from 2014, so 5 years ago, and it was a picture I took of Nashville FC, Nashville Football Club, which was our amateur club in the 4th division when we were playing at Vanderbilt. And we had 1,000 people at that game, and we weren't in headlines or anything like that, but the soccer community was already there, the seeds of it was already there at that point. And so why am I bringing that up? Because the songs are 6 years old now.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
I've never been to a game, but it's the first thing that I think of.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have a supporters section. We have multiple supporters groups. The oldest is the Roadies, so they're kind of the grandpas of the supporter thing. But we have the Assembly, we have Eastern Front, we have Music City supporters, and probably one other that I can't remember, and I hope they don't get mad at me about that. But we have multiple supporters groups. They all sit, well, most of them sit in the supporters section, and they stand and they sing for 90 minutes, and they play drums, and they let off smoke bombs, and they have a great relationship with the players, and they run around the stadium teaching the other fans the songs. Yep. And there are some songs that the whole stadium will sing, and some that basically just the supporters sing. And yeah, we have a lot of songs.
So I need to bring my kids.
You do. Yeah. A lot of people will ask me, when does it start? And the truth is, it's already started. It's already started, and you can wait until I don't begrudge anybody. You can wait until Major League Soccer hits, but the history is really being made right now. You know what I mean? You should go see it right now, right? The games are exciting. We're in the 2nd division right now, but we actually play in a competition called the Open Cup. And for anyone how many people here understand how club play in soccer works professionally? So I can give you a quick crash course on it. Okay, almost nobody. Great, wonderful. Okay, okay, how many of you understand how American football works? Okay, pretty good. So here's the important thing to keep in mind when it comes to soccer. American sports, football, baseball, and basketball, we're the best in those, right? And so the NBA is that is the best basketball league in the world, right? The NFL, that's the best American football league in the world. Major League Baseball, it's the best baseball league in the world. And so there's no international aspects. I mean, occasionally we'll go play a game abroad, like MLB will play a game in Japan, or NFL goes to London to go play a game, but there's no international aspects to it at all, right? It's all America. When you're talking about soccer, it's a full-on global game, biggest game in the world, and every single country plays it. And so the traditions around it do not come from here, right? And we've had to, and don't get, America has figured out a way to Americanize it, right? But the traditions are coming from Europe. That's where they're coming from, right? The game started in England and spread very quickly throughout Europe. So the way that it works is you have a club, and the club is literally a club. It's not a team, it's not a franchise, it's a club, and it's the town's club. And I don't really know how else to explain it. It's like the New York Athletic Club. You familiar with that? It's like an athletic club that you'd go to, and yeah, they have a pro level, but the kids would play there, and you'd go there and you'd play squash or whatever. I don't know, right? But it's a club for the town, and that club plays in the league that the country has. But there's like different levels, right? There's what we call minor league and major league, right? Let's just keep it simple there, minor league and major league. So you're not stuck in the minor leagues if you're in England. You can win the minor league and get what's called promoted to the major league. And if you're in the major league and you are like at the bottom, you can get relegated to the minor league, right? So you think about a team that's like perennially bad in any sport, like every year they're just terrible. You know, I hate to say it, but like I'm from Brooklyn, like let's take the Knicks, right? It's so backwards. Like the Knicks is the most valuable team in the NBA. On paper, they are. Like they're the most valuable brand, most valuable team, highest ticket price, most merch sales. I don't know if people knew that. They're the most valuable brand in the NBA, and they suck every year. Every year. That could never happen in soccer. Like if you're the bottom of the table, like you're out. That's it. Bye-bye, you go to the minor leagues. Like, you know, we're making room for someone else who's better. It's kind of like Jack Walsh's 10% GE rule. Like every year I'm going to clip 10%, the bottom 10%. That's how soccer works internationally, right? So it doesn't work that way here. But in addition to the minor league and the major league, they always have an interleague competition, right? Which gives every team an opportunity to play every other team. And this is something like no other sport in America has. Like you would never see, you know, the Sounds are never gonna play the Yankees, okay? For example, right? But in soccer, that's a very regular thing, right? In any other country, it's very regular for the Yankees to play the Sounds. It's like super normal. So in American soccer, in addition to the Major League Soccer and USL Championship, which is the league we're in right now, they have a competition called the US Open Cup. And that is where teams from all 4 divisions are in a tournament and they all play all year to see who the winner of the Open Cup is. And there is the potential for a 4th division team to win the Open Cup. It doesn't happen, but there is the potential for that to happen. So like last night we played a game, we're in the 2nd division, we played a game against the 4th division team in the 2nd round of the US Open Cup. And the crazy thing, it's like March Madness, right? It's like, you know, you play all year in your different divisions, but once you get to March Madness, a number 1 seed can get knocked out by like a last seed because it's March Madness. That's what's so beautiful about it. It's so crazy any given day, right? And so last night, like we won, but we won 3-2 because this is like the biggest game that team's gonna play all year. So like for us, it's like, oh, we got to play this team, and for them, they're like, this is it. This is glory, right? And so you get this competition where like it's just super cool. It's just super cool. So even this year, we can play a Major League Soccer team. And last year, we beat the Colorado Rapids, which is an MLS team, in the quarterfinals of the Open Cup, and then we lost in the semis. So anyway, it was a long thing, but I just wanted you to know, like, you can go see like really cool stuff happening right now before we actually get to Major League Soccer next year. Yes, and you can teach people the songs.
I just want to say, my husband and I have season tickets.
Yeah.
And he
Thank you.
Because I played in high school.
Thank you.
Soccer. It is amazing. If you haven't gone, the stadium is unbelievably beautiful.
Yeah.
And the band that you're talking is right in front of us.
Amazing.
They're pretty crazy.
Yeah.
You do learn the chants. I'll call them chants, you know.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, like so obviously the owners are, you know, they put us up in the box thing, and I'll stay up there in like the first half, but the second half I always go down with the supporters. Always. It's way more fun. You know, way more fun.
I didn't know we'd be talking soccer, but just the other day I was looking at season tickets. Where should I get them? What's the best section?
I think as close to the supporters as possible. Like especially if you've never really, because it is. Okay, the Preds have an incredible game experience, incredible. But there really is not anything like a soccer game experience. Like, and it's because of the supporters. Like when I say they stand and sing for 90 minutes, I mean they don't sit down. They don't sit down. They stand the entire time and they sing. They stand and sing for the entire game. That's how it goes.
So what section would that be?
That's probably, it's the opposite of 120, so it's probably like 106, 107.
It's like, I call it the north side.
It's the north side, yeah.
Oh, Google my way there.
Yeah.
That's
The
good
view
advice.
is of downtown Nashville.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's
And when the sun goes down, it's beautiful.
it's like 106 or 107, but actually, like when you look at the ticket thing, it like there should be a thing that talks about the supporter section.
Okay.
So it should show you like what's nearby. Yeah. I like the soccer questions. I like talking about soccer.
So we have about 5 more minutes, so any other questions for Marcus? Amazing talk on healthcare. Is there any healthcare related things that you guys want to? Just soccer. Just soccer.
I'm totally cool with that.
I had a healthcare one.
Okay.
For all of those companies that you're seeing as kind of disruptors and whatnot, what do you see as the major barriers to entry for them?
In healthcare, it's just slow. You know, I just think sales cycles are slow, willingness to change is slow, and a lot of this is for good reason. You need to go a little slow in healthcare, quite frankly. It's not like record sales. You know what I'm saying? It's life or death, right? So it's slower. The problem is because it's slower, you know, people's needs from a job perspective don't really change, right? So let's say it's twice as slow to get something done as a innovator in healthcare, but you still got to pay all the people on your team. So you know, you might have to raise twice as much money, or you might have to be twice as efficient, or you know, you have to have different calculus in terms of how you approach it. That's the main thing. If what you do has value, it will make it through. I've seen it happen too many times. I'm not a cynic about innovation in healthcare, but it is slower. Like it's just demonstrably slower.
Back to soccer.
Back to soccer.
All right, so favorite American player, past and present, and if you could get one designated player from any league, who would it be?
So my favorite. Okay, so there's a bit of a asterisk on what I'm about to say. So my favorite player is Pele, but that's, you know, he's not really American, but he did so much for soccer in America, right? Yeah. I mean, while I was growing up there, I've got a signed ball by him, right? So like what he did for the sport in this country, massive. And then I would say sort of after that, if we're talking about a pure American player, probably Deuce, probably Clint Dempsey. You know, just because he's like, he's just raw. He's just raw. Yeah. And then what was the second question?
If you could get any designated player from any league in the country or any league in the world, who would be the designated player you'd want for the club?
Ooh.
One guy.
Ooh.
Any position.
Ooh. Man, that's.
Probably a striker.
That is a great question. Boy, that is a great question. So my favorite team that is not Nashville Soccer Club is Tottenham Hotspur, who nobody.
Give Americans a chance.
Who what do you say?
Because they give all the Americans shots.
Clint Dempsey. You know what I mean?
Howard, everybody.
Yeah. You know the sport, and so I'm not going to say Harry Kane because. I actually think Harry would do really, really well in America because I think his style of play is very physical, and that's kind of the American way of doing everything, right? He's very physical, very strong up front. He never dives. I've never seen Harry Kane dive. He never like falls over. He's always getting up. He's just a mentally tough player. So I think his stylistically, I think he would do very well in Major League Soccer. So I'm pretty big on him. I think he's one of the best players in the world too. But I think that's also universally accepted. I mean, you know, he was captain for England. Yeah, Golden Boot a couple of years. So probably Harry.
Cool.
Yeah. I don't think our CEO would agree with that. He was the CEO of Liverpool, so our teams are meeting each other in the Champions League in a couple of weeks. He's going to be there. I'm going to be here. Anyway.
We've got soccer, we've got VCPE, we've got healthcare. What brought you to all this? What's the confluence of your life that kind of led you to where you are right now?
Innovation and timing. So really, like my core competency is being a visionary, And over time, I've just gotten better at the timing piece. So in the last 5 years, I've gotten good at the timing piece, really through the soccer thing was my first really well-timed thing, where I saw it and I was like, ooh, this is gonna be big and nobody knows about it yet. So that was a good timing thing. And then the venture thing has taught me a lot about evaluating timing. But even before then, you know, like I was at South by Southwest in 2007 when Twitter launched, and that like sent me on a crazy trail of like doing social media, marketing, technology stuff. That was too early. You know, like the stuff wasn't really built out yet, and Facebook hadn't decided who they wanted to be when they grew up yet. So I've learned over time the importance of the timing piece, and I've gotten a lot more reserved there. But I would say that's it. Like, I'm not an expert in any particular industry. That's not really my thing. But like watching macro level trends and saying, ooh, this and this and this, that's gonna go, right? You know what I'm saying? And then just like, and then just knowing it and being totally cool, being laughed at for 4 or 5 years until it happens, and then laughing back. You know, that's like my thing.
Let's give Marcus
Thanks, y'all.